Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in the community. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, here we are. We're in the summer 2024. I cannot believe this, but I'm bringing you another special guest. Today, I'm getting to talk to Allison Flannery. Many call her Flan. Hey, Flan, so good to have you on the show. Let me real quick just mention that you have a couple of certifications. You probably have more. You have your SHRM-SCP, you have your Master's in HR Management, and you're also a regional senior HR business partner at Trane Technologies. I just saw you just celebrated 2 years, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And then lastly, you were also recognized as the 2023 Dallas HR Leader of the Year, presented at the Dallas HR Stars, where we met last. So, hey, so glad to have you on the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for the intro. It's a great hype for a Monday morning for sure.
Oh my goodness, right? Okay, so I always like to reflect on when I met my guests or when they came in my path, and I think
Mhm.
we've met before at a Dallas HR event, but here's the moment
Sure.
that I remember, and that is this. You, me, I believe it was Rebecca Zetz, and I want to say Chris Shiloh at the end of the HR Stars took a selfie together. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes, because I have never taken a selfie with you. And this is like an HR must-have thing. And so Rebecca was like, "Oh, you got to do it." And so naturally, we did it on the way out. It was a
I love
great,
it. That was
great
so
way to end the night. So,
that was so much fun. Oh my gosh. Hey, well, what'd you think about that event? We're going to talk about the award you got. What'd you think about the gala?
it was fun. That was actually my first time going, and it was just so refreshing to see so many HR faces, whether it was like Dallas HR folks or other people. I actually, funny story, a woman that I worked with, I was in grad school and we did a consulting project with her company, and this was like right around COVID. And so she was there with her company because they were nominated for an award. So it was just so funny to like see her like 3 years later. So it's just that beautiful world of like HR worlds colliding. So it was really great. And just like the talent in that room, like just a lot of brilliant people. So it's always refreshing
Oh
to be
my
around those
goodness.
folks.
Oh my gosh, right. And as a matter of fact, I had Kenny Braxton. He won an award on the show. I've had many past recipients on the show. It's just a special night of like I don't know how many that were there, but it felt like 300 plus people were there,
Yeah, it
and it
did.
friends, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm a big like award show girl, and it felt very like Golden Globes to me, which is like my dream.
I love that. I love that. Well, we're going to talk more about that because I do want to talk a little bit about the award. But first, you work for Trane Technologies,
I
and
do.
I just read on social media you're celebrating 2 years. I would
I
love for you
am.
to just I don't know share just a brief highlight for those who don't know Trane Technologies. Who is
Yeah.
Trane Technologies, and how do you serve your customers?
Absolutely. We're very popular in the summer because Trane Technologies is an HVAC company. And so, our mission is, we boldly do what's possible for a sustainable world. And so I work on the commercial side. So obviously think of like commercial, buildings that offices are in, but we also do a lot of work, servicing and installing equipment in hospitals, in data centers, in K to 12 schools, even like stadiums. So like my like recruiting
Mm.
tagline is I'm like, oh, like Taylor Swift plays in all these stadiums. It's like, yeah, like we do the AC for that. It's like a weird subtle flex. And so that's, what we're about as a business. And then obviously we serve our external customers. But then my customers, right, are my internal staff. So I support a commercial sales and service office of like 600 people, actually 636 if you want to be specific. And I mean, that's my job, right? Is to make sure that they're thriving. Like, I didn't get into HR because I'm like a people person necessarily. Like, I love when people are in a role that's like really aligned to their strengths because then they're naturally good at it, right? And they like doing it. And so they're like thriving in it. And I want them to thrive at work, right? Because we spend the bulk of our time of our life, unfortunately, sometimes at work, and then they can go home and thrive in other aspects of their life. So that's kind of what we're about at Good Old Trane.
I love that. I love how you first talk about mission because I love it when people say, "Hey, this is a mission-driven organization, boldly to do what's possible." I mean, are you kidding me? It feels good to work for a mission-driven company, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It helps you just kind of it's like your compass, like your North Star, right? To like, because you get so much in the grind at the end of the day, you're like, did that connect to what I was
Mm.
doing, right? And then if it's not, you're like, maybe I need to realign, like how I'm doing my role so that it's making a
Mm.
greater impact.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. Well, we know each other, but I'm sure there's some things I don't know about you. I would love to hear the Allison Flannery story. Like, where did you grow up and how in the world
Yeah.
did you get into HR and leadership?
Yes, a lovely question. So I am from Louisville, Kentucky. So
Mm.
horses, basketball, all that. Went to school at the University of Kentucky. And then I joined the Teach for America program after college. So it is an education nonprofit. So I went and moved down to Houston, Texas
Mm-hmm.
at the ripe old age of 22, taught 15-year-olds in ninth grade English. And so I taught inner city students. And so it was a great experience just to make that impact and obviously just support low income communities. And then really just fell in love with the organization. Then moved to Dallas a few years later to work for them. So did more of like project management, lots of like project plan trackers. And we ended up in Dallas running our own regional training institute. So think of like a summer training boot camp for 200 teachers. And you go and live in a dorm room at SMU and are all together for like 6 weeks. So a lot of that was, operations, compliance. And then as we grew each year, we added on a seasonal staff. And so that involves onboarding and hiring. And so I took on all that work. And so I was like, oh, I really like this. And then
Mm.
on the side, I was working at a gym called Grit Fitness. And it just started out as like work the front desk, get free membership. And I was like, sure, I'm a frugal girl. Sure. And then she was in startup mode and she was like, hey, do you want to like do some side projects? And so that evolved into me coming up with onboarding plans and hiring front desk staff. So I'm sitting here at night, like on Tuesdays, on my couch, like building out these trackers and like loving it and like salivating over it. And I was like, I think I have an idea of like kind of what I want to do. The other benefit was I had an education award that expired and I'm a project planning person. So I was like, okay, you have like 3 years before this expires. Like you need to go back to school. So it helped me like also kind of figure out what I want to go back to school for. Was it MBA? Not really. And then I went to UTA and shadowed a class on like data analytics and just like loved it. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, this is what I need to do. So then made the jump to go back to grad school. So I went to UTA um, part time, and this was pre COVID. So it was like going to night classes like twice a week and then working full time. And then moved into just more like full time HR roles. So then kind of moved. So it was like in the L&D space and then the recruiter space. And then I worked for a charter school, and that was kind of like an HRBP type role.
Mm.
And then once I graduated, once I got my SHRM cert, I was like, we're done learning. We're ready to like move to like the corporate world and just try something bigger. Just there's a little bit more complexities. There's more, pieces of HR you can touch on that side, commission plans and things like that. So made the jump to Trane. And so it took me like 10 years, but we finally figured it out. We found our lane. I don't think anybody just like grows up saying, I want to be an HR person. I hope that's true, like for my niece or nephew, but like
Mm.
back in the day, I don't think that was true.
I love that. I would say I've interviewed almost 200 guests on the show, and the majority will say the words, I fell into HR or I fell
Yeah.
into what I'm doing today. There is so much here. Oh my gosh, Flan. Okay, so University of Kentucky, go
Right.
Wildcats.
Yes,
I
hopefully
love
our
I
basketball
love that.
season hopefully is on the up. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Oh my gosh. Hey, okay, so I love all this. You use the word love it like two or three times. So first of all, I love how you have like you can see things that you really enjoy doing and you just really kind of dive in there. But you also have to say yes to things. And so I was thinking about how, okay, so you have this job, but yet you go to the gym and they say, hey, would you like to do this? You're like, yes, I'll do that. And how that's just led you to
Mhm.
where you are today, right? How
Yeah.
like how did you like have you always been like just curious and interested in that kind of person, or did you like see opportunities, you're like, hey, I need to take advantage of that if I need to make something happen for yourself?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I'm a big strengths finder person. I like live
Okay.
and breathe that.
Okay.
So my top strength is achiever. So I think that's like probably
Mm.
why I take on these things, right? I'm like, yes, but then
Mm.
one of my other strengths is learner because I do enjoy caveat. I enjoy learning things when it's like interesting to me. I'm a
Mm.
recently newish homeowner, so there's some things I'm like, I want to learn how to do that. So I gravitate towards things I want to learn. So I think that was part of it. It was just like a curiosity, and it was like
Yeah.
I like creating things for other people, right? Whether
Mm.
that's like a process or it's like
Mm.
an experience. And so I think it was just in that, and then with strengths finder they talk
Mm.
about when you're in the flow and right, like, and it
Mm.
was what I was doing, like I liked it and it wasn't like soul sucking or draining, and I enjoyed doing it and I was good at it. So
Mm.
I was like, oh, this is why I just kept saying yes. I was just like, you never know like what you're going to learn from it.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, along the way, one of the common threads for high performance is they have people that have kind of walked alongside them or encouraged them or helped them. I like to call them mentors. I feel like you, as a teacher or a coach or a mentor, but were there some people in your journey that have helped you along the way? And
Oh
if
yeah.
so, what was it about them that was so helpful?
Yeah, so many. I mean, so I think about obviously like every manager I've had has had some, impact on me. I think about even like the gym, like that was just like a fun thing. But then, the woman is, a Cornell grad. She's a businesswoman. Like, so she was like very entrepreneurial. And I'm very like, at the time, I was like very linear. And so
Mm.
it's just really, it was a good dynamic. And so it was helpful to learn like just like how to operate a business and how to like try new things or how to pivot when things aren't working. And so like that was like I just like soaked up all that and working with her. And then on like the HR side, right? You go to Dallas HR and
Mm.
Ernest Martinez is my mentor who's fabulous. Well, I think he fired me at this point. He's like, I don't think you like really need me anymore. But he was so great back in the time because I was like, hey, like I've been in education and nonprofit and I'd really love to move into corporate. I have no idea how to do this, like what industry. And he was so helpful in just talk to this person, do this, make a contact list. And so he really helped me with that. And then I even
Mm.
just think about like people who just gave me their time. Like Mike Pierce called me like just to chat. He's like,
Mm.
I'm sure very busy. There was someone named Ashley Shetler, like literally called me for 50 minutes while running around doing errands and was like, hey, when you go to interviews and you want to do like salary negotiations, here's like your market value. Like
Mm.
I hadn't even met her. Like literally, someone just gave me her name. I messaged her on LinkedIn, and just it's those kinds of things where people
Mm.
are just willing to give you the time. And I'm happy to multitask. I'm like, go to
Mm.
CVS, that's fine. I will gladly soak it up. So I've just been very grateful where like someone along every point of that has just been able to give me their time. And I'm very time oriented. So when people do that, I like am so appreciative of it.
Yeah, I love all of that. I love how you also talked about how sometimes, you talk about, and Ernest has been on the show, Mike's been on the show, they're great.
Yeah, they're
How
great.
yeah, so you give them a shout out, but sometimes it's people that they may not
Mhm.
realize they are helping you because you're watching them. You're
Mhm.
watching how they show up. You're watching how they operate. You're watching their passion. You're watching how they do things, and you get to see what's good and what's not good and things like that along the way. Well, you said earlier, I wrote down the words "found your lane." I love that. I wrote the book "Find Your Lane." I mean, so when someone says that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to dive into that because when I think about finding your lane, I think about purpose. I think about calling. I think about this is what I was meant to do. So here you are, you're teaching, and then get your master's, and you've kind of ventured into the HR space. Now that you're here and you've got to like taste the fruit and see the good, that see the challenges and all of those things. Was there a moment where you said, "Hey, you know what? This is like I'm this is what I want to do."
It was like two parts. I think it was like one when I was like literally on the couch on a weeknight making my passion project side hustle doing like I wrote out like this like core value
Mm.
like document and did like a what's it called like an acronym for it, like I called it gloss, right? Because it was about just like polishing your customer service
Okay.
just like for fun, right? And it was in that moment where I was like just like giddy over. I was like, I love this. So I was like, oh, okay, like I think this is the type of stuff I need to be doing. And then I think it was I went to shadow that class at UTA, and I
Mm.
left because I had gone to other MBA classes and I had sat in on them, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm here, like there was one about, I can't even tell you, it was about like operations or
Mm.
something, or I don't even know. Clearly didn't love it, zoned out, right? Was not
Yeah.
engaged. But when I was in that HR class, and I'm also like a very like intuitive person. I'm like an Enneagram 1. So I make a lot of decisions with my gut. And I had that like belly feeling when I was in the HR class at UTA. I was like, oh, I love this. I'm like
Mm.
salivating over this.
Mm.
And like this is like the work that I need to be doing. So I think after leaving that class, I was like, oh, you're officially an HR girl. Cause I did kind of have to like pivot and rebrand myself because
Yeah.
a lot of my nonprofit friends were like, oh, you're the ops girl. Like that's what I used to be. Right. And now,
Mm.
I might see them today and I'm like, oh yeah, like I haven't done that in a long time now. Like, I've been in the HR lane for a while. So it's just, I think that's probably when I made like the full pivot and was like, all right, we're going to go this way now.
Okay, I wrote down 3 words here. The first word I wrote down was reflect. And you were reflecting. I love how you said, "Hey, I just wrote this down, gloss, as an acronym," and you're seeing it. And
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me of one day when I was sitting down and I circled in the middle of the circle was relocation because that's what I do. Help families relocate, help companies relocate talent. But then I started putting the spokes on the wheel to all the things I was doing. A podcast, a speaker, I'm writing books, and I'm writing those things. And I'm looking for the things that don't fit because eventually there's so many things you get to be doing so many things. And you're like, I don't want to lose the feeling of joy that I have now. They all have to be in alignment. And so the point here I want to make is that it's so important sometimes for you to just sit back and think and reflect on what you're doing and get in that alignment. But I also wrote down pivot and rebrand. And I just want to stop there just for a second because there's probably some people listening right now. They've got their journal out, they're taking notes just like me. I have a full page of notes there, Flan. And I want you to just talk about this just for a second. I gave you a few questions. I didn't give you this question.
That's all right.
When people think about pivoting or rebranding, like what should they be thinking about? What helped you pivot and rebrand yourself?
That's a good question. I think what was easiest about it is, like I said, like I live and breathe Strengths Finder. So like
Okay.
I don't necessarily have like a like destination job or like dream role, right? I'm not saying like in 7 years I want to be an X title. It's just like I know what I'm naturally good at
Mm.
and love to do. And so whatever experience or role is going to help me capitalize on those, then that's a win-win for me and the people I'm working with. So I think I just used that consistently because I also like kept showing up. Like I first took it in Teacher America, then I took it again in grad school, then I took it again through like a leadership cohort. So I was like, all right, clearly like this is a ongoing thing in my life. So that helped. And then I think like I didn't mean to, but I built kind of this brand for myself. So when I first started teaching, someone called me, like the kids call you Miss Flannery. And then one of the other co-teachers called me like Flan. And then it just kind of like took off from there. And so it's just always been my brand. And so like I've just always been Flan in the workplace, right? It's like short and sweet, it's efficient. Um, there's lots of other things that come with it. I used to have a Flanny pack when I worked in operations, right? To carry things around like scissors and tape and all that. And so then moving into HR, right? You just kind of take the Flan and
Mm.
then you just kind of you tweak it a little bit. So it's as I pivoted, I guess to answer your question, it's like I just kept who I was authentically and like my strengths and just kept those and then just put them in a different space.
I love all of that. I took strength finders, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, maybe longer. Oh my gosh. When I was I think I was serving as president of Dallas HR. Maybe it was before that. And I'm wondering, and I haven't taken it again since. I'm wondering, like, if you take it more than once, is it going to show a different strengths? Or
It
any
so
thoughts on that?
I've heard this. It's been a minute since I've on my research, but what I was told is that your top 10 will never change over the course of your lifetime, but the order might.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So like mine actually did that like back in the day, like I think like competition was one of them or focus was one of them, and now responsibility is one of them. So
Because you're a homeowner. I mean, come
right.
on.
I'm an HR person. It makes sense, right? Like I'm responsible for like people's
Uh, this is so fun. Oh my
satisfaction at
gosh.
work.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Hey, well, let's talk leadership here. I like to ask my guests when they come on the show, if
Yeah.
someone said, "Hey, Flan, what's leadership to you?" How would you respond to that?
I feel like I'm such a grad student still. I'm like, well, the definition that I remember studying. I mean, I think of it as leadership is the ability to influence others to achieve
Mhm.
meaningful outcomes. That could be getting in line to go to Target to go shopping with your kids. That could mean, launching a new initiative at work. I think there's different ways to lead too. Like, I think what people get, and I did this the first time I was a manager, feel so bad for my people because I was like trying to be what I thought a manager should be, and I wasn't being authentic. And I was like, I'm so sorry. This is a horrible intern experience. Because there's different ways to lead, right? Like my leadership style is like, I like to learn and lead alongside you. So I'm going to like
Mhm.
lead side by side with you. I'm going to get my hands dirty with you because that's just how I learn. Um, there's people who lead from the back, right? Like they want to give their folks, they may not be that loudest hype person, right? I think typically we think the leader's like the hype person in the room and they're always in the front and they're the loudest. You can be a leader that's more reserved and quiet and you lead from the back. And that means that you like really let your people have the autonomy to do what they need to do, and you kind of provide that guidance from the back where you can see everything. So it's like, to me, there's different ways to of doing it. You just have to pick the one that works for you.
Yeah, I love all that. I love it side by side. Hey, well, let me ask you this. You're basically you're a business partner. You're
Mm-hmm.
helping lead initiatives, HR initiatives with different leaders with throughout the organization. What do you, I don't know, maybe one thing you enjoy most about being an HR business partner?
Yeah, I love this job. Like when I think about like favorite roles, this is probably my favorite role. I think it's also because I grew up playing competitive volleyball, so I just was always in a
Mm.
team sport, and this is very team oriented, right? Like I'm on our leadership team. There's 16 of us, and I support all of our different area offices, right? And so I think my favorite is, I think there's two. One, like I love working with my general managers, right? And like coaching them and their people. So it's like, okay, like how do we, what does this person need? And so I love that idea of, again, getting people the skills that they need to continue to be
Mhm.
successful in their role. But then I also love the like workforce planning piece of it because it feels very much like a kind of like an NBA draft, right? Where you're like, all right, we're bench building. Like, who's going to take
Mm.
on this role? Are they ready yet? Are they not? What do we have to do to get them there? So I love kind of that like Tetris of who's going to go. Because I think it goes back to
Mm.
Strengths Finder. I think somehow this is all a plug for Strengths Finder because I'm like, oh, that I know that that person's good at that, which tells me they need to be in this job. So how do I get them developed enough to be ready for that job? So that's really the part that I love too.
Yeah, I love that. Whenever I hear different people talk about things that they love to do and they really can see the results of what they're doing and it really drives them, I always like to kind of follow that up with success, like because I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to figure out how can we be successful. How does like I don't know for those listening, how do you measure success in your role? Because you're basically coaching, mentoring, guiding, supporting when someone looks at you or you look at your own results, like how are you measured?
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's a great question. I have a couple that I use. We obviously do an annual, survey, and
mm,
one of those metrics is about manager effectiveness, and that's like a really big one. And so that's what I like to use also is like kind of my Monday to Friday pulse check is like, are my managers being effective? Like, are they giving feedback the first time to someone? Are they, equipped with tools when an employee needs to go out on leave? And so I look at that. And then I also like to look at not just for managers, but for employees across the board, just like inclusive behaviors, right?
mm,
Like, are we creating an inclusive culture? And that's obviously a little bit harder to measure, but on a Monday to Friday, if I'm, doing rounds in the office and like,
mm,
what do I see? What do I hear? Like, do I see in the break room men making space for a woman to enter the conversation? Great. That's an
mm,
inclusive behavior.
mm,
Did I
mm,
see someone praying before eating their lunch? Cool. That means that they're comfortable enough to do that in the workplace. So I use those as like kind of anecdotal evidence, right,
mm,
to check for inclusive behaviors. And then obviously from an HR data side too, you look at retention, you look at, are we recruiting, are we creating as much of a diverse workforce as we can, right? Whether that's through bringing in women in leadership roles, whether that's through, continuing just to have a diverse workforce. So obviously I have those metrics as well too. So it's kind of a couple, I guess, different ways to look for am I doing something meaningful?
Well, I love that. And I always say that feedback is a gift. And whenever you get that feedback from that survey, that's great. But you mentioned something here that a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't do. And they're wondering how they can get those results or see success. And you mentioned you walk slowly through the crowd. You walk through the office. You observe, you engage. Where did that, like, I just want to ask you, where did that come from? Did someone teach you that? Did someone model that's what you do? Because a lot of times you'll see people just behind their computer for 8 hours and they're
Yeah.
then do their job and go home. But yet when you walk through the crowd, you can really connect and see things from a different perspective. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think it's funny now. I've never made this connection until right now, but I think it's from my ops days because I used to
Mm,
train my team and we read some article. It's like pretty outdated now, but the concept still is relevant of uh it was they were saying when you work operations, think of yourself to build trust, right? It's clearly I haven't read in a while, but it's like to build trust, you do rounds,
mm,
right? Think about doctors do rounds, right? They check to make sure their patients are alive, right? So similar when you're operating systems, we do rounds. So, we would walk around and we used to have things like copy centers, so think of like a FedEx.
mm,
So it's like, okay, like what are our wait times? How many people are here? Okay, let's check the dining hall. And so I learned it through that. And so then I think I just incorporated that into every piece
mm,
of a role I had moving forward, right? To your point, is like sitting at a desk isn't going to help me. Like my job is to
mm,
serve the people. Um, and there's so much you can learn and I've always just been an observer. I think I'm like 60 introvert, 40 extrovert. So I'm more of an observer in crowds. And so I even just like sitting, I remember like the first week on the job, it was the third week of the job, we went to Austin and they were like, "Do you want an office to sit in?" And I was like, "No, I'm good." And I sat in the break room because I just wanted to hear like what people were saying, not like gossipy, but just like what were
mm,
they talking about, problems in the business that they're frustrated with. That's going to help me do my job better, right? Or what's their culture like? They just got a cold brew machine and they love
mm,
it. It's like, okay, cool. That's like a fun thing. So for me, I think that I got it from ops world and I've just always incorporated it. Now it's a little hard to do, right?
mm.
Sometimes in HR, people are like, "Oh my God, you're the scary lady," right? And I have never thought of HR as scary. So that's something I've had to tell myself. It's like people don't have the same perception of HR that you do necessarily.
Mm,
So I've sort of had to rebrand also in this role. Like HR
mm.
isn't the scary lady. Like sometimes if I need to be, sure, but I hope not.
I love that. Right. If you're listening right now, you need to write this down. My job is to serve the people. Flan. That is a fantastic perspective. And I think that's so important. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. And that is at the end of the day, you have to start by building trust, whatever you do, wherever you're doing it. That's where it all starts. And I talk about in my book, Life and Leadership Lane, I talk about, developing influence always starts with trust. And so sometimes it takes a little while to get going. So you probably had to be a little bit patient too with maybe some different groups or different people because you're trying to build trust along the way, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I had 10 years of education going into an HVAC company. You think I'm going to
Mm.
walk in and be like, I know everything. And so like
Mm.
entering very humbly,
Yeah.
asking questions out of
Yeah.
curiosity. I would also ask a lot because I was new. So I had that outsider perspective of like, if someone says like, well, we've always done it this way, I'm like, oh, well, tell me why that is, like I'm just curious. So I think that's always how I've approached any new role is like, let me get the lay of the land, let me get the context. And I would even say like those little things too. Like my boss does a really good job of this. Like you need to set up a room for a meeting. You can help move chairs too, right? It's just those
Mm.
little things. You can go get a bottle of water for a customer that walks in. Like you're not above that. And so even just doing those little things like that, I think shows that like you're a team player, you're here to
Mm.
support everyone.
That's so
So
good. I love all of that. Hey, well, let me ask you this. You also volunteer, of course, at Dallas HR. I think you're part of is it transition support, career support?
career support,
Okay.
yes.
I'd just like to ask this question. I mean, you're involved in a lot of stuff. Like, how does volunteering, how's that helped you in your job? And the reason why I ask that question is because there's probably people listening right now. They're like, I'd like to volunteer, but I'm so busy, you know. I don't know. Just give me one way volunteering has helped you or helps you in your career.
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's the connections you make. I joined DallasHR when I was in grad school. Because again, I was like I was like, I know I need to transition into corporate America. Somebody help me, right? It's like that was like my initial driver. But then like getting to do cool events, right? Like we did a fashion show like at our last career, job seeker
Mm.
event. So it's just fun, what not to
Mm.
wear to an interview and stuff like that. And then, I'm a member of Junior League of Dallas, which is another organization. And so just getting to do, for me, it was like, how can this help me do experiences that I may not, one, be brave enough to do on my own? So it's kind of like makes you do it, right? But then gives you the opportunity. So, like, I was a financial coach for a woman, kind of living near the poverty level. So we met once a week, which then also kind of selfishly helped me with managing my own finances, right?
Mm.
So it's like, but then from there, I think what's beautiful is like just, for me, it makes Dallas feel like home and like a real community, because
Mm.
even like last week, like a woman I know from Junior League, I needed a plumber and she lives like 10 minutes from me. And I was like, hey, do you have a plumber? And she was like, yeah, I've had this guy for 25 years. So it's just like it's like your network, it's your go-to people, I think. So
Mm.
volunteering like kind of love shoves you into doing something you may not do on
Mm.
your own. And then just the ability to make more connections across the community for
Yeah,
me.
that's so good. That's so good. I always say your network is your net worth, and that's really what that's all about. It's just continue to just build this community,
Yeah.
that you can't pay for. Like you have to go through the process in order to have this community, and it all starts with one step, one action,
Yeah.
showing up. I think you used that word earlier, just to show up.
Yeah.
Hey, well, let me ask you this. Okay, so now, I mean, after this conversation, I could tell why you are an award winner for Dallas HR as the emerging HR leader. What did I don't know, Ted, for those who are listening, what did that award mean to you? And did you know you were being nominated for that? How did
So
that
it's
kind of work?
yeah, it's an interesting story. So I actually applied last year as well,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I self-nominated myself last
Okay.
year. And
Okay.
I didn't get to a finalist or anything. And I was like a little bit like my ego was hit. I was like, dang, I thought I would at least like get to be a
Mm.
finalist. But it was very competitive. So like rightfully so, I get it. And so then this year it came up again. I was like, I'm gonna do it again. Like I'm gonna apply again. Like I'm gonna continue to throw my hat in the ring. I don't care if it's like embarrassing if I self-nominated. So I
Mm.
did it and then got to be a finalist. And then I was like, okay, like that, even that just felt great, right? To be recognized. I
Mm.
think like HR is such a giving role. You don't always get the love back. And I'm not like a
Yeah.
words of affirmation girl. It's not my love language, but if you give it to me and it's genuine, I'm gonna take it. And so
Mm.
like just that award felt like one, like it was great just to be affirmed and like the things you're doing are seen and appreciated. And then I think it also just made me be like, okay, cool. Like I am doing meaningful work, which is what I want at the end of the day.
I love that. And when you said that just now, I immediately thought about self-talk. Like it's almost like that person that's saying, "Hey, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great work." Sometimes it feels, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's the
Yeah.
hard stuff. We're hearing a lot about that. Hey, I do want to just touch on this real quick, and that is you applied once, then you applied again. That,
Mhm.
I mean, that takes real courage. That takes being persistent. Uh, where did that come from? Is that just like, I don't know. I mean, it's because a lot of people they might apply for something once and then they're like,
Mhm.
ah, I tried it, but you just kept on. Like, I don't know. Where's that
Yeah.
come from?
I honestly think it's the achiever in me. Like that's just, it's like a
Got it.
blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
Like I could make to-do list all day long, right? Just to do them, And so I think it was just like I'd love to meet this goal. It was an opportunity. It was a challenge, a milestone. And I was like, let me see if I can get it. That was kind of my mentality because I was like, I feel like I have done important work and I
Mm.
feel like I, in a way want to get validation for that. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the right word, but
Yeah.
I think it's also just my parents. Like I'm a Midwest. I think that's the Kentucky in me. It's like we listen. I mow my own yard. Like I have my own lawnmower. Like I cut my own grass. Like
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you just, I don't know. It's like it's almost like I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, it's nice to we don't do this to be recognized, but it's nice to be recognized for the work that we do or for the work someone does. In fact, I would say that you probably get just as much satisfaction from somebody else winning an award as well, because you know
Mhm.
that they're doing great work and now somebody's recognized them, like Donna Howard. She got the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah.
And Kenny Braxton, I mentioned him earlier, I think he won the D&I award.
Yeah.
So you're just as happy for them too, aren't you?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's just
Yeah,
so fun to watch.
yeah,
Yeah, like your people, like that's your,
yeah,
that's your
yeah.
HR
What
family. And you're like, go mom, go dad.
Well, and I also say this too. That's why I always encourage people, and I'll do it too. Like if I win an award, I think Find Your Lane won an award, and I put this out there on social media, and a lot of people look at it as like self-promoting, but people want to know that they want to cheer for you. So
Yeah.
whenever you win something and people are cheering, you're like, "That's my people." Hey, I do want to ask you this last question before I shift here, and that is, there's people listening right now. Like you've done some great work, and you continue to do great work, and I know you will continue because you are a lifelong learner. And so for someone listening right now, they're like, "Hey, you know what? I need to get on track." I don't know. Share a tip or something. I don't know, something you do that has helped you and continues to help you grow in your career.
I mean, I would say like stay relevant. I
Mm,
think like when I used to do my operations job, right? I did it for 5 or 6 summers. So, the first couple of years you build the model. And then in year three, we were like, cool, the model's done. And it was great, great. And then we noticed around year like 4 or 5, the model wasn't working anymore because our customers changed, right? We went to a different demographic of people, right? From millennials to Gen Zers and that shift, and they needed different things. And so we had to stay relevant and we weren't being relevant at the time. And so I think right now I kind of continue to do that. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and not even like HRE podcasts, just like I like pop culture. So like I
mm,
just listen to pop culture podcasts, but then even in those, right, you hear, HR related things, or you hear what kind of your everyday employee would be thinking. And then I think laughter is important. So like I even love to follow just like funny HR Instagrams because
mm,
they're making fun of things that people are actually really complaining about, right? So it helps me just to say like, okay, this is the voice of my customer
mm.
in this moment in 2024. So how can I take that information and use it in my role to help my people? So just staying relevant, I guess,
Yeah.
is probably my big tip.
I love that. That's a great tip. And I always that reminds me of, I always talk about, looking for the story in everything that you're doing, right? You're like,
Mm-hmm.
how does that relate to my work and how I can serve people? And that's what you're doing, is you're looking for the story in everything you do. And I just love that. Hey, well, before we shift to It's Time to Accelerate, I do you've given a lot of like great advice today. But I always like to just give my guests one last chance to share. Were you ever given any advice, like, I don't know, maybe it was from your parents, maybe it was in school or in your job? It was just so good. You just find yourself giving that advice often.
I don't know if this helps, but the worst they can do is say no. I think my mom says that a lot. That's probably the one that sticks out to me. As we talked about nominating for the award, the worst they're gonna do is say no. If you throw your hat in the ring for a promotion, you don't get it, like they're gonna say no, but no in them right now. It could be a yes later. So I think to kind of help, because I think I've experienced that in the past, like a little bit of like analysis paralysis, right? Or like right now, like we're really focused on, in my role, entering kind of a growth mode as a company, and this idea of start before you're ready. Josh Linkener is a really great follow on LinkedIn if y'all need one, because he talks about this idea of like start before you're ready. And so it's like, just do it. The worst they're going to do is say no. And so I
Mm.
think that's the one that stands out.
I'm glad you shared that. There's somebody listening right now that needed to hear that today.
Yeah.
And so this is so good. Oh my gosh. Well, I could do this all day long. I'm going to shift to It's Time to Accelerate for the last part of the show. Ask us just a few fun questions. First question I'm going to ask is, any favorite books that you have read and why?
Well, I'm a big young adult girl because I taught high schooler, so I just love any type of like young adult book. It's funny now, I'm actually right now I'm reading like a Nora Roberts series because
Mm,
my mom gave it to me. I do think Matthew Perry's memoir is probably the most like raw
mm,
thing I've ever read.
mm.
So just like really, really just it kind of takes your breath away.
Yeah. I read a lot of business books, but I'm trying to read some fiction
Mm-hmm.
books as well. and I'm trying to like navigate and read some different things. So yeah, my library, I'm trying to really
Oh, yeah.
diversify my
Yeah.
library. Oh my
I
gosh.
taught Lord of the Flies, so I highly
Oh,
recommend that one. Yeah, the
I
kids
love that.
always really
Okay.
loved it.
I
So,
love it.
yeah.
I love it. Okay. Hey, I always talk about great leaders or grateful leaders. What are you grateful for?
Obviously, I think family. I think just having I mean, I live in Texas. I've lived here 10 years, so having my family all lives in Kentucky. So having family far
Mm,
away, but then having like my friends who have become family here too. I think like my health, I think I'm a woman of faith, and I think just having a job. I know that sounds weird to say, but just grateful to have a
mm.
job that I like.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm grateful for you coming on today, Flan. This has
Yeah.
been so good. Okay, I got two last questions.
Okay.
First question is what energizes you?
Ooh, that's a good question. What energizes me? I would say when I'm with a group of people getting something done.
Mm,
Yeah. Whether it's like, building, I don't do puzzles, but if it was like, we did a puzzle, we got it done. Or if it's like a team, getting that project to the goal line. I
yeah,
think I really like that.
love that. Love that. Okay, here's my last question. Flan, 10 years older, is around the corner and she's knocking at your door. And you're going to go answer that door. What's she going to say to you?
I think of my dad's advice that he gave me when I was 23 and I was crying and I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life because I thought I was going to be a lawyer and that did not work out. And he said, in the next 5 years, do 3 different jobs and learn what you like and don't like. So I think I would just continue to remind myself of that. But I think more important, I would say, like, just be authentic to yourself. Don't try to act how you think something should act. So don't try to act like how you think a manager should act. Don't try to think about how there's one way that a director looks,
Mm,
right? I think that's probably what I'd tell myself on a professional level. I think on a personal level, I would say like love on yourself a little bit more.
mm.
Like you should sleep 7+ hours, not like 5. You should learn to eat healthier foods and have strong muscles. Like just so I
Mm,
think it's just making sure you love so much on other people, but you need to love on yourself. So
mm. I love
too.
that. That's a wise 10 years older Flan. Oh my goodness.
I'm
This has
really an
been so
80-year-old.
good.
I'm like an old soul. Like I'm truly an old soul.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Allison, coming onto the show and just, I don't know, just sharing your perspective and congratulations on
Well,
your award. I
thanks.
mean, that's a big deal. I'm so excited for you and I can't wait to see your road ahead. Hey, for those who, I don't know, they listen to the show today and they're like, oh my goodness, I was inspired by this, or I want to connect with Flan. How's the best way for them to connect?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. It's just
Mm.
Allison Flannery. I'm on Instagram. I think it's just Allison Flannery. So those are probably my two that I do social media wise.
I love it. And when you connect with Allison, be sure and let her know you heard her on Life and Leadership Lane. Let her know something she said that, I don't know, impacted you in some way to make the connection that much better. And so thank you so much. I appreciate you, Flan, for coming on
Thank
the
you.
show. This means so much. I appreciate your friendship. And again, I can't wait to what your road ahead.
I know. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad we got to take a selfie, and I hope we get to take so many more.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, can't wait to share it. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Bruce.